I want y'all to know I used to be a bus driver. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. I worked my way through law school driving a school bus.
The President of the United States used to drive a school bus. Fun fact about myself is that I actually drove a school bus. Here I was thinking that the President of the United States and I only shared a passion in sustainability and the electrification of our public transportation. But just like him, I used to drive a school bus during college to help pay for my education. Before I get into this video, I do want to say congratulations to ProTerra for hosting the President of the United States. This is huge news for ProTerra, a company that already owns 50% of all electric buses in North America. They already have over 130 different customers across 43 US states and even into Canada. I also want to mention that the President toured ProTerra's manufacturing plant in Greenville, South Carolina, as part of his push for his infrastructure plan. And within that infrastructure plan, there is $77 billion allocated for the electrification of our public transportation. And this is how those funds will be allocated. Check this out.
Your American Jobs Plan would transform our nation's bus fleets and support American manufacturers like ProTerra that we will see today, which including through an investment of $45 billion to help transit agencies and school districts adopt clean zero emissions buses. The American Jobs Plan will also provide $32 billion in financing to help electric vehicle manufacturing, to retool and make sure that Americans are getting good jobs in this globally expanding industry.
So huge news there. Of course, you have $45 billion going to transit agencies and to school districts, and then you have $32 billion that is on the table there for EV manufacturing. Now, what I want to do next is actually go over the tour itself with Biden, and then I'm going to pick and choose a lot of clips. I'm not going to show the entire video. I highly recommend that you check that out on your own, but I'm going to fill in some of the gaps and expand further on things that were said and things that I believe should have also been mentioned and discussed. I'm Alan with EV News. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Let's get into this video.
So to kick us off in that tour in this building that you see right here on the map, I'd like to introduce you to Mayor Knox White of Greenville, who is going to start us off and kick off the tour. Mayor White, over to you.
Hey,
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. President. Welcome to Greenville, South Carolina, virtually. You'll have a chance to tour this remarkable business called ProTerra in just a few minutes.
So the gentleman that we just heard from is the mayor of Greenville, South Carolina. His name is Knox White. And what he talks about is why they recruited ProTerra to Greenville. And the big reason is that they're looking for green infrastructure in their diverse manufacturing economy. Another aspect about Greenville that he talks about is that they have advanced manufacturing as well. So just up the road, they have the headquarters of Michelin and also a BMW manufacturing plant. After the mayor is done speaking, he turns it over to Jack Allen, the CEO of ProTerra.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
How are you today?
I'm well. Better for seeing you guys.
Well, yeah, thank you. You know, on behalf of 600 employees that we have here at ProTerra, it's really my pleasure to welcome you to Greenville. This is where we build zero-emission, all-electric transit buses. So thank you for joining us today. But really, more importantly, thank you for your commitment to electrifying commercial vehicles and your commitment to the development of American technology to do so, and the commitment to American jobs as it relates to combating the climate crisis. This is incredibly consistent with ProTerra's mission. Our mission is to advance EV technology to deliver the world's best performing commercial vehicles. And we're incredibly proud to be an American company, and we're incredibly proud that our technology was developed here in America. So ProTerra has 3 businesses, and they're all centered around the design and manufacturing of these battery packs that you see here.
What Jack Allen is going to talk about next is extremely important, and the reason being is that a lot of people believe that ProTerra just makes electric buses, which is not the case. ProTerra has a great vertical integration and is well diversified in the EV ecosystem by also making the electric batteries as well as the charging stations for said batteries. Now, the 3 branches of ProTerra's businesses are as following. The first one is ProTerra Powered, the second is ProTerra Transit, and the third one is ProTerra Energy. Now, in ProTerra Powered is, of course, the batteries. ProTerra Transit is how they partnership with all these different companies, and Jack Allen's going to mention a few later, and then I'll expand on that once he's done. And how with these partnerships, they're able to put their batteries into those commercial vehicles. And then the third one is, of course, ProTerra Energy, which is the charging stations themselves. Let's get back to the video.
These battery packs are built in our plant in Los Angeles with 85 United Steelworkers. We take these battery packs and we put them into transit buses. We're the #1 builder of electric transit buses in North America. We've sold over 1,000 of them. And as a matter of fact, there's 16 of them in your home state of Delaware.
I know.
Some in Wilmington,
Yep.
some in Wilmington, some in Dover.
Yep.
There's also 14 right outside the White House in Washington, D.C. And Mr. Mayor, there's 30 of them in the state of South Carolina, with many of them being right here in Greenville. So that's one thing we do with our battery systems. The next thing we do is we take our battery systems and we have partnerships with commercial vehicle manufacturers across the world. Australia, the UK.
Before I expand into the partnerships that ProTerra has, I want to talk about where you can find ProTerra's electric buses. And of course, you can find them in city transit, you can find them in school districts, universities, airports, and even national parks. Now, when Jack Allen talks about these partnerships, what you need to keep in mind is that ProTerra will be supplying these companies with their batteries that are ultimately installed into these companies' commercial vehicles, and they will be powered by ProTerra. And some of those partnerships include Daimler, Volta Trucks, Lightning E-Motors, Optimal, Bus Tech, and Komatsu. I wish Jack Allen would have talked about this partnership just a little bit because it proves that these batteries are not only for electric buses. Komatsu is a Japanese multinational construction company. So these batteries will be placed in big construction vehicles, and that is huge news.
But our biggest one is right here in the United States, and it's right up the road, and the name of it is Thomas Built Bus. They build the school buses, and we electrify them with our systems.
It's important to note that the day before Biden was doing this virtual tour of ProTerra, Vice President Harris was actually at the Thomas Built Bus headquarters in North Carolina.
So we just started this program with them last year, but I have to tell you, I'm incredibly excited about the prospect of electrifying the school buses. I don't know about you, but I want my grandchildren riding on clean, quiet school buses.
You and me both.
Right. So the third part of our business might be the most critical, and that's where we do charging and infrastructure. We've had agencies and fleets tell us over the years they would like to go faster in electrification, but they need help on charging and infrastructure. So we have a business that's doing just that. But I believe the fastest way to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles is a focus on charging and on infrastructure. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce you to Morgan, and Morgan is going to show you how we install this battery pack into that transit bus.
In this next part, unfortunately, Morgan experiences technical difficulties and there's no sound coming from her end. And you can tell that she's extremely nervous where she even drops her phone. Ultimately, Jack has to give her his phone and then his earpiece, but that ultimately still doesn't work. And while it's not really that big of a deal because things like this happen, the one part that I really wish could have been hammered home during this is when the volume or her sound actually comes back and Biden does ask her a question. So he asked a question about how much do the batteries weigh, and she says, I think a rough estimate is 2,000 pounds. That's not a big deal. But the next part is really key, and that's when he asks, what is the range of these batteries? And now, this is really what differentiates ProTerra from any other bus company, and that is that ProTerra is a market leader when it comes to the range of these batteries. And their capacity, the full capacity, is 329 miles of range, which is huge. So when he asks her a question, she says, 300 miles, I think that's not really that big of a deal. I know she's just a manufacturing engineer and she's not the actual engineer that made the batteries. Of course, as Jack Allen mentioned, those are made in Los Angeles. But I really wish that point was hammered home because it's really what has people excited about the future and opportunities with ProTerra.
And what kind of range does that have, that bus?
I think it's a 300-mile range for a bus.
After that, we moved to the VP of Manufacturing, Brian Miller. And with Brian Miller, we learn more about the suppliers, including small businesses that contribute to the components found in the electric bus. And it's pretty cool because we're talking about the frame of the bus, which is called the composite body. And he mentions that these composite bodies are actually built from the ground up. He also talks about how these composite bodies are actually weigh 10% less than a diesel bus. And that of course helps with the increased range and the efficiency of the drivetrains. So that's huge news. And then he mentions that these composite bodies are actually built by another American company called TPI Composites. Now, I did some research into TPI Composites, and you can actually buy their stock. They are a publicly traded company. As a side note, I want to talk a little bit about TPI Composites just right now. I know this is about ProTerra. I just want to talk really quick about it because it was quite intriguing, and it has to do with sustainability as well. So TPI Composites, what they do is they make the wind turbine blades. And since 2001, they have made over 65,000 of these blades. And they have partnerships with General Electric and Vestas. And then not to mention that they make these composites for the electric bus. And it's cool to mention that on TPI Composites website, they talk about the buses. And what they mention about these composite bodies is that there will be a compounded annual growth rate of over 15% through 2025. Then they mention that these electric buses are actually the fastest growing industry amongst any other sector. So that's huge news for ProTerra, of course. And after that, we're taken to one of the manufacturing technicians, and her name is Mercedes, and she did an amazing job talking to Biden. You could tell that she's very passionate and she really likes her job. And she was very eager to speak to President Biden, which if you notice throughout this virtual tour, he seemed like he wanted to talk a lot and ask a lot of questions, and a lot of people weren't reciprocating or giving him very short answers. So great job there, Mercedes. I give you 5 stars because I feel like you did an amazing job there.
You're not going to go swinging off that top, are you, with that?
No, I hope not. I'm attached really
All
good.
right, I got you.
The last part of this video I want to go ahead and talk about really quick. There are a lot of important aspects to this, and the first thing is that, of course, we go back to Jack Allen, and he does mention some very important things regarding the buses and how different cities and how different transit agencies have been able to afford it. And what it is, and I'm not going to get into the specifics, but it's through a federally funded program called the Low No. And that is what has been allowing a lot of transit agencies all the way from Alaska to Miami to be buying and purchasing these electric buses from ProTerra.
These vehicles were bought under FTA federal funding. It's a program called LONO that the FTA has had for a number of years. It was intended, and it's worked just remarkably well to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles.
After this, we are shifted over to Will Rivera, who is the commission manager there at ProTerra. And this is the final inspection or the final stages of the actual bus. So here's where the buses will actually be wrapped. And ultimately, then the customer will be contacted and the customer will actually do an inspection as well. Now, Biden does ask some good questions here about what kind of testing are the buses put through before they're actually handed over to the customer. Will Rivera does a great job of answering those questions, but one of the big things that Joe Biden says is that we are really behind in this race for EVs.
We have a lot of catching up to do, but we're going to be in a position where we ought to own the future here. We ought to be the single most significant suppliers of electric buses and vehicles in the world before it's over. Right now, we're running way behind China, but you guys are getting us in the game. You guys are getting us in the game.
Now, one of the big reasons we are behind China is because China has already electrified their public transportation. I have read something that over 90% of all electric buses are actually found in China. That is crazy. And if you think about it, that puts basically everyone behind China when it comes to the public transit sector. Now, what China did was electrify their public transit, and then that has trickled down to even the public sector, and now most of the public are looking to buy EVs. China has a very, very aggressive EV agenda. So does Europe, and the United States seems to be catching up and making this effort forward. If we can electrify the public transit first, then people will be accustomed to it, and they will ultimately decide and buy EVs. And hopefully we follow that kind of same blueprint where we will see the electrification of our own personal public transportation take off. At the end there, Jack Allen thanks President Biden for his time, and then he also expresses how excited and how passionate the employees are there to help push the electrification of our public transit. He does finish off by saying that they want to be 5 times what they are today in 5 years, and that is great news. For a company that has already sold over 1,000 buses and is looking to scale up to over 1,000 buses each year, this is massive news for ProTerra.
We want to grow this business to 5 times what it is today, 5 years from now. That'll create over 2,000 jobs in the transit assembly alone, plus jobs in California to make batteries and chargers and the 600 suppliers.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun making it. I hope you guys got a lot out of me recapping and going over the virtual tour that Biden had with ProTerra. Once again, congratulations to ProTerra. In the description box below, you can find the link to watch the entire video on your own. Once again, this is Alan from EV News, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.
Well, I'm going to come down and see you in person, so I look forward to seeing you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack, and the whole
Thanks.
team.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Sir, that concludes our tour for today.
Doing good work. Doing good.